are some characters you never actually forget. The moment you hear their name, you're transported back to a different time. Of course, some of those characters became icons, but what about the others? For newer fans, some of these names in this video might be completely unfamiliar, because that's the wonderful thing about video games. We don't just remember the worlds we explored, we remember the characters who shared those adventures with us, even if history has quietly forgotten their names. So join me today as I take a look at some of the obscure and slightly underappreciated characters that have had the pleasure of running alongside Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, if you've only ever played the Sonic games, you probably know Flicky as one of the tiny birds trapped inside Dr. Robotnik's badniks. For many players, that was the extent of Flicky's story. Years before Sonic became Sega's mascot, Flicky was already starring in its own arcade game, and then everything changed in 1991. Still, the Flickies live on within the Sonic team legacy, appearing here and there. But anyway, let's move on to another bird-like character. If Sonic's universe has taught us anything over the years, it's that almost anything is possible. But when it comes to a green duck who solves problems by throwing explosives, well, that's when things start to get a little bit interesting. Now, Being the Dynamite wasn't originally created for the Sonic universe. He first appeared in Sega's arcade game Dynamite Ducks, before later being brought into the Sonic mythos. For years, Bean became one of those characters that existed mostly in the memories of dedicated fans. But for the most part, he remained a forgotten piece of Sonic history. But Bean has been spotted in other Sonic titles, especially if you know where to look. And speaking of Sonic fighters, let's take a look at a particular polar bear that laid the smackdown. During an era when many Sonic characters were becoming louder and more expressive, Bark stood out because of how little he said. Unfortunately though, Bark suffered from the same problem as many characters from the Sonic the Fighters. He appeared in a game that many players never got to experience, and after that, he slowly faded away into the background. Wouldn't it be interesting if Sega revived Bark in a Frosty showdown with other Sonic characters? Maybe one day we'll get the pleasure of seeing him going toe-to-toe with Knuckles, but anyway, let's move on. Introduced as part of the Sonic Boom universe, Styx was unlike almost anyone who'd ever come before her. In many ways, she represented the same creative spirit that introduced characters like Big the Cat, Charmy Bee, and even the Babylon Rogues. When Sonic Riders arrived in 2006, it introduced something completely different from anything else in the franchise. And at the centre of this new adventure were three mysterious rivals known as the Babylon Rogues. Together, they were a team of skilled thieves who were descended from an ancient civilization known as the Babylonians. And that's perhaps the most frustrating thing about them. The Babylon Rogues felt that they were being built for more. Sonic fans still remember them fondly, while others have completely forgotten about them, which is a shame. And the same thing happened to these next two characters that appeared within the Sonic community. When Sonic Adventure arrived in 1998, it introduced players to a very different kind of story. Unlike the other characters in the game, Gamma's journey was not about saving the world or defeating an enemy. It was about discovering what it meant to have a choice.
Goddamn right.
Originally introduced as Sonic Triple Trouble for the Sega Game Gear, Fang was unlike the usual villains Sonic faced. With his long ears, sharp outfit, and his distinctive motorbike, Fang looked like he belonged in a completely different kind of adventure. Thankfully though, years of fan appreciation eventually brought Fang back into the spotlight, proving that forgotten characters can sometimes find a second life. Who knows what the future will hold? Maybe Sega will bring these characters back into the limelight. Only time will tell. But anyway, come back next time where I take a look at some of the titles that you would play on sick days. Thank you so much for watching and see you next game.